Hey, this is Maya Body Mechanics 3, Run. So in this session we'll cover the basic poses and timing of a two-legged run cycle. There's different ways you can animate a run, but in this class we'll use this Preston Blair example. If you go to your camera panel and you just hit 6 on your keyboard to show the textures, we have another reference here for the run. So we'll use this example, but we'll modify a little bit just to keep more in line with today's aesthetics and style. This example was created for classical animation. The Maya software is going to help us with some of these in-between poses, so we'll just modify it a little bit. But please feel free to use any other walk cycle example from any other book. But if you're new to animation, I would suggest you continue using references until you have the poses memorized, or you're just able to come up with your own poses and animate a run without reference. And you'll notice in the background we just put a bunch of cubes in here just to show the run when we have them run through frame. And this is basically what your outcome should be. Just an example. Show them running on the spot at first, and then have them take off. So a run cycle is basically just it's a series of leaps into the air. And a lot like the walk cycle, it can be described as controlled falling. So he's always bounding into the air and then catching himself with his feet and going into a squash pose. Let's just rotate the position node 90 degrees. Okay, so we're just going to have him running on the spot for now. So let's get him into a pose, something like the first drawing here. So first thing we're going to do is work on the center of his body. We're going to go pose to pose on this to start, and then we'll refine it in the graph editor. So select his root node and just get him into the right angle. For a run cycle, just like the walk, he's going to be torquing his body back and forth the whole time that he's running, so let's get a bit of a twist on him. Again, you can select all those spine controls, just shift select them all, and you can rotate them all at the same time. And then we'll just put his head back so he's looking straight. So it should be something like this at first, and then let's work on his legs. So we'll get that first contact pose. Okay, then you want to go into your perspective view and just check the knees. You can bring the knees out a little bit. You can get a little bit of a rotation on the feet, some live rotation, just so they're not perfectly straight. Maybe something like that for the legs. And then let's work on the clavicles, and then we'll do the arms. He's swinging his arm back. Let's get the clavicle back a little bit, and we can even bring it up. So he's swinging his arm up and back. So now let's select the shoulder, and then we'll just work on the upper arm angle. So I'm going to get that way up. And we're going to be trying to get something like this pattern with the arms, where it's sort of an S shape. It's a line of action through the arms. And then you can get that clavicle forward. Okay, so something like this is good. We'll just select the whole character, and we're going to key that on frame 1. We'll go 6 frames down the timeline and we'll set our next pose. You can see at this line of action at the top of the character here in our reference, this next pose is sort of the squash pose, or recoil as he calls it in his book, and it's the lowest pose, so his head is at the lowest point in this pose. So we'll just grab the root control and bring that right down, and we can even angle his body forward a little bit as well. So I'm going to work on the center of the body first. And let's just grab the spine controls, just calm down this torque here a little bit, and just bring it, we're not going to zero it out, but just bring it in a little bit, and then we'll fix the head. Alright, now I'll work on the legs and then we'll do the arms. So that should be good for this squash pose. And then let's go 6 more frames down the timeline. So our next pose, we're going to go with the one in the example. It's sort of a launch pose. We kind of need that in there just to get that leap happening. Very similar to the jump we did in the last class. We're going to keep 1 foot planted, just like this is here, just like in the example, and just get the whole center of his body to be sort of a straight line of action that runs through it. We want to keep them angled still at this point, because the faster they're running, the sharper their angle of their body would be. So if he was really booking, you'd have him something like this, right? But I think we're just going to go for a quick jog on this one. Just keep it somewhere in the middle. Okay, so we'll bring the foot right back, and then we'll put a little bit of roll on it, so to get rid of that toe bend. Alright, so at this point I'm probably going to straighten out the rotation Y on all the spine controls, just keep them straight. He's just starting to swing his entire body toward his left side. Okay, so something like this is good. Just make sure you have this nice line of action going through his body where it's pretty straight, maybe a little bit of a bend back. And we'll set that pose. And the next one, like I said, the next one we're going to sort of combine these two where he's in the air. A little more similar to this one, where his arms have that nice S curve going through it, and you can draw a line right through where his legs are. So we'll go 6 frames down the timeline again, and this is the highest point in the jump, so we're going to bring him right up high. You can actually bring him back in Z a little bit, and just bring him up to his highest point. This is when his left arm is stretched out the most, so he's torquing his body in the opposite direction now. So let's just grab all of his spine controls. We'll get the spine. We'll get the torso done first, then we'll just get him torqued right over. So we're going to see a lot of his back, more of his upper back than the lower back. So it should be something like this. And then we can bring his clavicle back. His arm's going to be back really far. Bring this clavicle forward. And then we'll adjust the neck and the head. Alright, so that's looking pretty good for our next pose here. And just key all that. Alright, so let's just scrub over what we have so far. So just like the walk, the foot that's sliding on the ground, you want to get it from each key pose to each key pose. You want it to be sliding an equal distance so that we don't have any foot sliding later on. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, and then we have our 4th pose. So now we have to go back into our next contact pose, so this exact same pose but on the other foot. And a quick way to do that is just to copy this pose. We want to get the pelvis to be at the same height as this one, so what we're going to do is just select the entire character. I'm going to copy this pose, go to the last pose that we set, go 6 frames down the timeline, and we'll just paste it. We'll just switch everything to the other side. We'll just rotate this so it goes in the opposite direction. So we torque the other way, and then we'll fix the head, and then we'll have to reverse the arms and the legs. Okay, so we get the arms reversed. So now we just have to reverse the legs. Alright, so this should be good for our contact pose. It's the left foot contact pose. We'll key that, and we'll go 6 frames down. And then we're going to do our next squash. So again, we'll just copy the squash from the other side, and we'll reverse the legs and the arms. So we're also going to have to reverse the torso as well. So we'll start off just by selecting all these spine controls, and we'll just move it over to approximately the other side of the same amount. Repose the head, and then we can reverse the legs. Okay, so something like that is good. And now we're going to go with this launch pose. So after the squash comes the launch. So select the entire character. We'll go 6 frames down the timeline. Paste that. And the spine controls are already set to 0 in the translate Y. They're already straightened out. So we'll just start posing the feet. Okay, so something like that for that launch pose. We're just reversing the arms and the legs. Just tweak that out a little bit more. Some negative space in here so the arms aren't in front of each other. And we'll select the button and key that. Okay, now we have to go to this extreme pose. We'll copy this one and then go 6 frames down and paste it. First thing we'll do is reverse the spine. Then we'll fix the head. This arm's going to be back now, so we're going to bring the clavicle back. This arm's going to be forward, so we'll just bring the clavicle forward on this one. Let's just go ahead with the arms. Alright, so we're going to key that. So after the extreme is the contact. So we already have the right leg on the extreme pose, and then it's going to be right leg contact. So we're going to go right back to frame 1. Copy frame 1. And we'll go 6 frames down the timeline and paste it. So now we should have a complete cycle here. So let's just play it and check. It's a little slow. We can play blast by holding shift down and selecting a region on the timeline. Let's do a quick play blast just to check that. Remember to have your scale down a little bit so it's not 720. Just check and remove temporary files so you don't save a movie file. We're just checking for speed here, really. So that's way too slow. Okay, so let's just bring everything in way closer together. So I'm just going to select the second pose and everything after it. Make sure all your controls are selected. And let's make these 3 frames apart. So we're going to bring them all in 3 frames. Shift select all of that and we'll play blast it again. I'm not going to go to the options this time. Just play blast it. It's still very slow. We want to get a much quicker walk. So at this point, let's we already have all the controls selected and we have the keys selected in the timeline. Let's just right click and make everything spline, just to smoothen everything out. We're going to have to fix the feet. We don't want the feet to be on spline, especially the rotate Y, because you can see that they're starting to go through the floor here. And that's because our Y curves are dipping down underneath 0. So but for now, let's just spline it. We just want to get the general speed of this run. We need it to be a lot faster. So even faster than this, let's bring them 2 frames apart. So I'm going to get my range slider here and just spread my timeline out a little bit. We already have everything selected, so let's just bring everything down to 2 frames apart. We're just going to bring in the distance between each key pose 1 frame so that they're 2 frames apart. When you're first starting out animating in Maya, you should be doing a lot of adjusting your timing before you start refining. Just make sure your timing is as good as possible before you actually start to refine anything. So this might look like a fast jog. You can press Ctrl L on your QuickTime to get it to loop. So actually that speed looks pretty good. Let's select our feet controls, look into the graph editor, and just make sure that these are, let's just put the rotate Y on flat tangents for now, for both feet. And just scrub over and make sure that not going through the floor. And then what we want to do is select each foot and look at the translate Z. That's how the feet are sliding from front to back of the character. We want those to be on linear, and these curves here should be a constant motion. So these should be as straight as possible. And we'll just set all that to linear. We just have to make these straight for now. We're probably going to have to refine it again in a bit. And then we'll take a look at that. What we did there with the translate Z on the feet, it just causes this whole sliding motion along the ground, where the foot's sliding along the ground. It causes that to be steady motion, so we don't want it to be speeding up or slowing down. That'll cause slippage when we start to animate the entire body going across frame. You can refine this a little more. Go in, select the rotate Z on the head. That's this channel here, the rotate Z. And you can add in some overlapping action, movement on the head, overlapping as it comes down, and then after he lands on his way back up. On his way back up like this, we can a little bit of drag on the head, so it appears to be heavy. So you can do that right in your graph editor here. The way I suggest you go about it is to go in between the two poses that you want to affect. So say here he's starting to rise up. Place your time marker right in between the two key poses, and then you can bend these curves. So you go to the place where the time marker is in between, and then just bend the curve to the right or left of it, and you can see the result if you bend this. You can see his head's going down, and that's what you want at that point. And if you don't like the way it's affecting the curve on the other side of the key, you can just slide the keyframe up. Also experiment with breaking tangents, doing this sort of thing to get what you need. Just refine it as well as you can, so you can see that little change I just made. Just gives the head a little bit of drag as he's moving up, and then it pops right back down really quick, so you wouldn't want that. So I'd do this kind of thing and just have it gradually come down, and then you can see the result of that. That's a little much, but again, you could bring all this down, calm the curve down a little bit till you get exactly what you need, and that's looking okay. So do all that kind of fun stuff on the head, and you can overlap the wrists as well. Put some nice drag on the wrists and elbows and feet, and just get that working really well. We want to get them running on the spot, maybe for a cycle or two. So what you can do is copy this entire cycle. You can do it in the timeline, or you can do it in the graph editor here. So say I select all the controls, or all the curves for all the controls, and I'm on the last frame, or the last key pose. We can just Control C, Control V that, and then just make sure the set where you copied it from, just make sure it's set the spline, except for the foot. And if you scrub over that center point, it should hook up. There shouldn't be any kind of a bump in the animation. Alright, so what we want to do is just get them running on the spot here. Just give us 2 cycles. After about 2 cycles are complete, just have him run off frame, and it'd be a nice touch. You don't have to do it, but it'd be a nice touch to follow him along with the camera a little bit. So I'm just going to go to the end here. All you have to do is grab the pause node, set a keyframe after your 2 cycles are done on the pause node. It should be actually on a contact pose, and then just go to, I don't know, however far you want him to go, and let's translate him down the stage a little bit. And I'll just set another key, and he's going to be traveling along the x-axis. So you can see this, your dimensions in the corner here. I'm going to keep that on linear. You're going to have to cycle it more times here. So again, you can just go in the last frame, select the whole thing, Control C, Control V on your keyboard, and it'll continue the cycle. So after you've translated him in X, you can scrub over that and see if the feet are sliding. So I can see here that my feet are sliding back too far, and I don't like that. So what we're going to do is just advance them forward a little bit, just by grabbing the last key in the Translate X on the position node and moving them forward. Sometimes you may have to move it back depending on if the feet are sliding forward or back. By moving this up a little bit, I'm actually making them travel a further distance, which causes the feet to either stop sliding or slide more. So he runs right up into about this point. So get that happening, and let's get our camera Go to the outliner, select the camera position. So just go to the point where he starts to run toward the right side of frame, and we'll key our camera. We want to put our keyframe on the same frame as the pause node. So key the camera there. Just so the pause node, you can see I have the pause node keyed at frame 33 and at frame 75. So the camera would be the same thing. If I select the camera now, the key should be at 33 and 75. And then we can just, for the last keyframe of the camera, just slide it over. And then when we scrub over that, we can pan along with them. Alright, so try and keep him in the center of frame. You're going to have to, for the keyframes of the camera, select your translate X and make those linear, so that both the position control and the camera travel at the same rate. And then just have him run off frame. It would be nice if we can keep him in the center of frame throughout the whole pan. Have him start running on the left side of frame on the spot, and then he can run to the center, stay in center, have the camera pan with him for a bit, and then he should run off. So just something like this. Alright, that's pretty much it. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in Body Mechanics 4, Pushing Weight.